everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some fried pork tenderloin sandwiches per Torrin's request and some Cajun sweet potato fries, and we're going to cut up our Hami melon. So kind of easy, classic in our house. This is like a family favorite meal. I didn't know what to cook today, and Torrin is like, ooh, can you do pork tenderloin sandwiches? And that I can do. So I'm going to peel up our sweet potatoes here. And then we're going to kind of make little sweet potato fries that we will do a nice Cajun seasoning on them. I tend to like, I'm not a big fan of sweet potato fries that are sweet. I like mine savory. And I think Cajun plays pretty good with it. So I'm just going to do kind of a quick peel with my knife over it. I find this is the easiest way to peel sweet potatoes. It gets off that skin and that kind of white outer layer of it, which is a bit more dry. And you can do it fairly quickly versus if you have to use a potato peeler. Okay, we got one down, one to go. I always just cut off both ends. That way I have a nice flat surface to rest my sweet potato on. And then I just kind of guide my knife over the sweet potato. And you're not pushing too terribly hard on it. It peels. It's much easier to peel it than it is to cut through it. You know, sweet potatoes, although they are like a softer potato when you cook them up, they are kind of stiff to cut through. So let's get these guys. Last one. And now we're going to make our fries. So I am going to, I think let's cut them in half. And then we'll do kind of like a chip because I think that works typically the best with sweet potatoes. Now, I don't make mine super thick because I want them to be more of a crisp than super soft. So we're just going to do nice little kind of chips. Enough body on them. You don't want them as thin as a potato chip, but just kind of nice little like wedges here. We'll cut these guys up. And then we'll add some olive oil, some flour, and some seasonings to coat them up. And then we'll lay them out on our baking sheet. And just try to get them all to be roughly like the same width, because if you have any that are too big, they will cook up. They will be like, won't cook up as quickly. So then your other ones will either get overcooked or you'll have some undercooked. So general ballpark. Luckily, also sweet potatoes, you know, you've got a good window of cooking them before you overcook them. And let's get our last guy in. I know, I was like sitting here, what to make. I knew like when we first got back from camping and everything like that, there was always like a couple of them like, ooh, I want this, this, and this, because, you know, camp food is pretty similar. But now I'm like, stuck in it. And you know me, I never really meal plan. We've got our sweet potatoes cut up here. Let me grab my olive oil. And and we're going to get these sweet potatoes will be our side for our fried pork tenderloin sandwiches, which are a hit in this household. And I know they're not really common outside of the Midwest, but they are delicious. We're going to add in our olive oil. We're going about maybe 2 tablespoons, a nice little drizzle, enough to coat everything, but they don't need to be like soaking in them. And then we're going to add about 2 tablespoons of flour. And this is going to help create a binder to hold all those spices on and also give you kind of that battered fry taste or texture. And then we're going to add in some garlic or some onion powder. So I'm going to aim for about a half a tablespoon, a couple good shakes around. I'll give it a nice savory flavor. And then we're going to do some garlic salt. And we're going to do about a teaspoon, because we're going to use some Creole seasoning, which also has some salt in it. And then some paprika. You're going to want about a teaspoon or so. This is going to give it a nice kind of coloring to go with the orange of the sweet potato. And then I've got some Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning. This is a bit of a kick. So we're going to use about a teaspoon, but it's got a kick. So if you don't like super spicy, just use a little bit less. Or you could just use a seasoned salt if you wanted to. I can handle a little bit of spice, but I can't handle a whole lot. So we're just going to sit here and kind of coat up our sweet potatoes with all of this good seasoning here. And make sure that flour creates kind of like a paste that will stick to it. But I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil because sweet potatoes are kind of like sponges. So I want to make sure I have enough to kind of coat them, but have it's like a little bit wet, but not dripping off of it. There we go. That's about good. So we've got them all seasoned up. You can kind of see you've got this nice kind of coloring on all of them. And then I'm going to take my baking sheet here and we're going to lay them out, and we're going to just make sure we don't have any touching each other. That way they crisp up. Now I like to do mine right on the baking sheet versus doing a parchment paper because I think it crisps up nicely on there. I feel like when it cooks against the metal, it crisps really well. So we're going to spread them all out. And again, try not to have them stack on each other because those ones that are stacked, the top ones won't cook as well. So just take the extra time and use a nice big sheet. I only use 2 sweet potatoes, so my like regular sheet should use well. But if you're doing more, either do 2 sheets or get one of those really big baking sheets, the 1.5 sheets. Here, let's spread these guys. I think we're going to have just about the perfect amount of room on here for all of them. But this is, you know, they need their space to cook. It's crucial because that's going to give you the best kind of crisp on your sweet potatoes. I do it with all my fries. You know, you never want to have them stack. You know, if it's like 1 or 2, that's fine, but try to have them all kind of laying. You know, we're going to have to do a little creativity in here, getting these last ones in. And then I have my oven set to the air fryer setting at 425. If you don't have an air fryer, you can do convection bake at 425, or you could do a regular bake at 450. Okay, there. We've got these out. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, and we'll put these in the oven. Okay, let's go pop these in. And these will be so good. They'll have I love a good savory sweet potato fry, but I find most places do them just sweet. So we've got them in here. We're going to have them start kind of cooking, and then we'll check on them. I'm going to set my timer for about 15 minutes, but I think they might need a little bit more, but I want to check on them, and so I don't forget about them. Okay, let's start making our pork chops, our fried pork tenderloins. I'm going to grab my seasonings over here so we can make our seasoned dredge for them, and then we'll hammer them out and we'll start our frying. So these were just 6 pork chops that I kind of deboned a little bit, and then I'm going to hammer them thin. You can also use those ones that are already thinned out and hammer there. I will say pork is one that you're going to want to hammer regardless of whether you've got a thin cut, because it will make it nice and tender. I'm going to use about 2 cups of flour. So just good old all-purpose flour for our kind of seasoning base. And then I'm going to add in our onion powder. I want about 2 tablespoons because I want that savory onion flavor to really come through for our, like on the pork chop. I think it will taste just really good on the pork tenderloin. We're going to add our paprika, which will give it a nice golden color. So about a tablespoon. Has a very mild flavor. You're not going to notice it as much, but it will add a nice coloring to it. And then we are going to use some Montreal steak seasoning. This has got a strong pepper flavor and it has seasoned salt in it. So it has a great flavoring for it. And I'm going to use, I have about 2 tablespoons left. So I'm going to use the rest of it. But this will give a nice little kick, a little peppery kick to it. But it's not super spicy. It just has that pepper flavor. And then I'm going to mix this up. And then we'll add in some seasoned panko crumbs after we're done hammering these out and dredging them to give it a little bit more of a crisp, like a crunch to it. Here we go. Just making sure sometimes that spices like to hide in my little pan. Okay, now I'm going to mix up my 3 eggs for this. I always say you probably won't use all 3 eggs in it, but you're going to need more than 2. So you always want to err on the side of having a little bit extra than a little bit less, because you don't want to have to be making stuff in the middle of your like cooking, remake dredge or remake egg wash. So I've done that plenty of times before, and now I just err on the side of having too much. Here we go. I'm just going to mix it up so that we don't have any big like egg whites that are stringy, because what will happen is your pork tenderloin will grab it and then it will like you'll have a big snotty strand. Okay, we're going to use my, this is a meat tenderizer, little hammer. We're going to hammer out our things until they're nice and thin. So you're going to give them a good little beating here.
Shan just left you something.
Oh, well, thank you, Shan.
Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. We appreciate that. I'm going to just pull off that bit of fat. You're going to hammer it out. And this is going to make it nice and tender. And it's also going to make it easier to eat, because if you leave it really thick, it's going to be harder to bite through.
Good day, Sheriff.
Is there a sheriff hat on me?
And a mustache.
There's a new sheriff in town. Okay. This is always the fun. So if you're got a little anger you need to let out, a little stress you need to let out, it's always a good meal to make. It's not really common, like here in the South, nobody's really heard of like fried pork tenderloin sandwiches, but up north and like where I'm from, Iowa, they're really common there. They're delicious. Whenever the Renaissance Festival comes to Nashville, they have them there. I always love getting, but theirs is ridiculous. It's like this big, and then you have this teeny tiny bun. I'm like, you could get like 4 sandwiches out of that.
Shannon is sending you a bunch. I'm going to have to show you later.
She's good at my work in here. Okay.
You have a heart punching your face
as I pound this out. Always fun. Now, if you don't have one of these, and I didn't get one of these for the longest time, I had this garlic press that I've never used to press garlic ever. But I used to wrap it up with plastic wrap, and I used that to beat my meat for a while until I finally was like, I should just go buy the $10 meat tenderizer. But you're like, it works fine. I know people who will use like a can of food and they'll hammer it out. So you don't have to have a meat tenderizer to do it. You can get creative, you know. Just make sure you do it on like a cutting board versus on your counter so you don't ruin your counters. That would be a very sad day. There we go. Got one more beating down. And pork is much harder than chicken. Chicken flattens out really easily, but it's worth it. This will make it nice and tender. Here we go. We've got them all. I'm going to remove this. Okay, and now we're going to do our dredges and then our egg wash. I'm going to get my panko breadcrumbs ready. I've got to do it in my order over here. You know, you get like a certain order you have to do it where they have to be like hanging in the right spot. And we're going to go and we're going to dredge them first. Get all that good flavor on them. Kind of coat it up. This is going to allow the egg to stick onto it. It's going to kind of create like a cooking glue that will then hold the next crunchy layer. This is going to give you that really good crispy breading. Not like the extra crispy from Kentucky Fried Chicken, but it's going to get you that good breading. And that's what you want. For a fried pork tenderloin, you want that crunchy kind of breading. It's kind of like, I call it a Wiener Schnitzel. That's essentially what it is, the German one for it. Here we go, which is delicious. And now we've got them nice and coated up. So I'm going to add about a cup of panko seasoned breadcrumbs in here. We'll mix this up. And I will say, just keep one hand. One hand's your messy hand, one hand's your clean hand for other cooking activities that you need to do. So if you had other stuff cooking over here, you'd want to get that going so that, it's worse if you have to stop, wash your hands, go do something. You just get creative. Like, I'm going to open up this and get my oil heating up. I always say, you've got to train your mind to only use one hand because naturally you want to just kind of take two hands. And I'm just going to put enough olive oil to kind of cover the bottom of my pan. You don't need a huge amount. We don't need it to be covering it. This isn't like a fry daddy where you got to drop it in. As long as you have a nice good layer that will kind of crisp it up, that's what you want. Okay, let's get our game on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the egg wash. You're going to go around, make sure you don't see any, it's all covered. And then we're going to go here, and then I'm just going to take this and I'm going to dump it on top of it. And then we push it down. That pushing down is going to allow it to hold on and kind of really keep that breading on there until it starts to fry. And you've got one done. And I will say it grows in size because you're adding a whole nother layer on. So it's always like when I make chicken tenders, the chicken pieces will look super small, but by the time you're done, they're like big, huge chicken strips. Or I always say I'm making chicken sliders, and I do it, and it's like a full-size chicken. It could go on a regular bun. Here. So we're going to pat it down. And it goes pretty fast once you get kind of going on it. But these are definitely, if you haven't ever had one, you should try it. It's a good variation to pork or to chicken. And it's cheaper. Like pork tenderloin is like one of the cheapest meats that you can get. So it's really affordable, especially, when you've got to feed like a large family. And so it's nice because it's filling, it's good. It's actually like leaner. The tenderloin is a leaner cut of meat. So it doesn't have as much fat in it. Here we go. And we'll cover this guy up. And we're going to press it down just to make sure. And again, this is to keep all of that breading on because nothing is so sad when you've done all the work to bread your food and then it falls off in the pan. Then the other important thing when you're frying is you put it in there and you just let it cook. You try not to mess with it or move it around because the more you play with it in the pan, the more likely you are to have it fall off.
You have a question? Could you use coconut oil instead of olive oil?
Yes, you can fry in whatever oil you want. Now, coconut oil might give it a little bit of a sweeter flavor because the oil, it has a bit more sweet thing, but you could fry in vegetable oil, coconut oil, beef tallow, anything under the sun that you want to fry in that you like. You could definitely do. It's a personal preference. I use olive oil for pretty much everything. So that's what I kind of fry in because I'm never heating anything super high. You just got to make sure, some things have higher smoke or lower smoking points than others. But olive oil has about a 400 smoking point. And I tend to cook mine around 350. So you don't have to, worry about that. There are some things like butter you couldn't really fry in because butter has a really lower smoking point and the milk solids would burn up in there, but coconut oil would work most definitely. Here we go. We've got all of them breaded, and this is why you keep one hand clean. So I'm going to turn this. We'll do a quick little clean up right here. Whoop. And just slide into my bowl. And then I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. Try to get it all off. But these are a family hit. And I let Torrin decide today. I was like, Torrin, what do you want? And sometimes he always throws out, like yesterday I asked, what do you guys want? And he's like, can I have lobster? And I'm like, no, we do not have lobster. And I'm not wasting lobster on a lunch. Okay, let's check. I can starting to see a little movement in the oil, which means it's starting to heat up. But the best way that I check to see if my oil is at a nice point to sizzle it is I get a drop of water and I put it in. And if water sizzles right away, it's nice and hot. So we've got a nice little sizzle right away. That means it's hot. I'm going to turn it down to 5 so that I'm not having it constantly heat up. And then I'm going to do 3 at a time here. We've got a little splatter. Now, when you do your drop of water in there, make sure it's only a drop, because if you put a lot of water in your oil, it will explode. It will bubble up and it will burn you. So just a drop. And that's important because if you put your food in cold oil or oil that's not hot enough, you're not going to get that golden fry on it. You're going to get a soggy fry, and that breading is more likely to stick to the bottom of your pan and separate from your meat. So really important to make sure you kind of do it, make sure it's hot enough. And so I always heat my oil up on high, and then when it's hot, I turn it down to the temperature that I want to cook at, which is around a medium. I've got it on like a 4.5, because when you put your meat in here or whatever you're frying, it's going to bring the temperature of your oil down because it's colder than what your oil is. Let me slide this out of the way. I'm going to grab a paper towel or 2. Now I'm going to remove, when they're done, I'm going to remove them out of there after I fry them on both sides. And I'm going to place them on a paper towel so it can soak up any of that extra grease, because that will keep it nice and crispy. If you just let it sit on like a plate, it's going to get soggy. You could also do it on like a drying rack if you wanted to, but I find it's just easier to do it on paper towels, because then I use these paper towels to clean up my extra oil. Okay, this is a Hami Melon. If you don't know what that is, they are delicious. They taste similar to, I want to say, a honeydew melon, but they look like cantaloupe, but they're not. And they have a crunch to them like an Asian pear. So they have a crunchiness to them. So, but let's go check on our sweet potato fries, see how they are. I think they're going to need a little bit longer, but I like to judge them in there because sometimes they cook up faster or slower. So I'm going to grab this. We'll take a peek at them and see how they are cooking. These are almost ready. I'm going to take them out and we're going to flip them over and then let them crisp up on the other side. So I'll take them out real quick and give them a nice kind of toss midway through, and then we'll flip them over or put them back in to kind of crisp up. Here we go. So they're still kind of got the softness, but they're not completely crisp. This one, we flip them over. That will prevent them from drying out, but stay more moist and crisp because we're going to hit the other side. There we go. And then I'm going to just spread them out. And I'll pop them right back in to cook up. Okay. Now, I'll know when to flip my pork tenderloin over when I start to see the edges of it get a golden brown, which typically is about 3 or so minutes per side. But right now I'm going to clean out the cavity of my Hami melon because it is pretty deep. It's very oblong, so similar to like a watermelon. Now you can get them and they'll be round too, but they are delicious. I will say they are one of my kids' favorite melons. They like it over cantaloupe and honeydew. I think this, I mean, everyone loves watermelon in our house, but I'm going to go dump out the seeds real quick. But these and the golden honeydew melons, which you can get right now, are so delicious. I'll say I am a big fan of the golden honeydew melons because they're sweeter than a regular honeydew. And they're just kind of a cool coloring. I'm always a big fan of trying different things up. Here we go. But Costco right now, they carry a lot of the different melons, so it's always fun to kind of try them up, because during the winter you can always get honeydew and cantaloupe, but they don't have as much variety. And so these are, you can tell they're like peak season. Here. And also, you want to cut your own fruit up because you're just going to save a lot of money cutting it up yourself. And there's like ways to tell that you have a good melon versus, sometimes you buy fruit cut up at the store, like pineapple, and it's like rock hard. So when I buy a pineapple, it's rarely ever ready to be cut up that same day. It typically needs to sit on the counter for a couple of days before we cook it up.
How do you know when they're right?
So for, let me grab under this real quick. So it depends. For each fruit, it's a little bit different. With these melons, I'm going to see if you can kind of see it right here. So you see how we've got these stems right here? As long as it's kind of flat and not very big and protruding, that is going to be a good melon that got picked at the right time. The feel is going to be firm, but a little like give, tiny bit of give, kind of like, when your avocados, when they're rock hard, they're not ready. So with melons, like cantaloupe, honeydew, Hami, they're going to have a little bit of a give or a softness to it. With watermelons, you are going to look for the belly button, I always say. And you want a smaller belly button that isn't that has just like consistent coloring on it. Then you want to look at the veining and make sure that that is also kind of consistent and dark green. And then, how every watermelon has a white spot where it rests on the ground? You want one that's yellow, not white. Yellow means it's going to be sweet because it grew evenly at the time. White means that it grew really fast in a rainfall. And so it's not going to be as sweet and it's going to be more watery. It's the same thing like tomatoes. If you've ever grown tomatoes at home, right after a big rainfall, your tomatoes will explode. They'll get really, really big and they won't be as nice. And a lot of times they'll crack on the vines. So you want ones that are grown more evenly.
You have a question. What's the name of this melon again? And can you spell it?
It's a Hami melon, and it's just spelled Hami. So pretty easy, but it is sweet like a honeydew melon. But the most unique thing about it is it has a crunch like an Asian pear, which if you've never had an Asian pear, if you know how when you eat regular pears, they have a little bit of a gritty texture to it when you eat, it's similar to that, but I want to say it's more of a crispy bite than a grit bite. But this one has definitely become like our favorite. And now if you take your melons and you make your slices on it, then it will lay flat for you to then take your blade and just slide it under there. So you don't have to be like a master cutter and arc your blade along the curve of it. Let's get here. I think these guys are just about ready. Yeah, let me grab this two. So we've got this nice golden fry. Now what you want to do is you want to put that oil side down onto the paper towel so that it doesn't get soggy. If you try to put the oil side up, you're going to have soggy breading because the oil doesn't have a chance to drip off, and it will, so nice and golden, oil side down. Gives you that crispy edge to it. It's just like with bacon. If you leave bacon to sit in its grease, then it gets kind of mushy and dissolves on its own. If you put a paper towel on it to absorb it up, you get a much more crispness to it. So we've got our next batch going in. And I'm going to turn that up to about a 4.5. I like, once it gets hot, I turn it down a little. Your oil is never going to stay at the same temperature. You're going to be constantly adjusting it because every time you put food in it, it's going to cool down. And then you'll want to turn it up a little, but then when you flip it, it's nice and hot. So then I always bring it down, and that helps me get a kind of a perfect golden crust on it. Without either under or overcooking it. I think a big mistake people have when they're frying off food is they do the oil temperature too hot, which then they're like, they can take it out and they're like, oh, it's perfect golden brown and crispy, but it wasn't hot enough to cook the meat inside, and then you'll have raw in the middle. Or you have it too long and you keep cooking it where you burn it. So it's kind of like you got to just watch it and check for it and kind of feel like when you're gonna understand when it's like as you learn to cook with it more. But always start, I always say with oil, start lower and slower when you're frying. Get the oil hot, then bring it down, and lower and slower. You're not gonna burn your food that way, and you'll cook it all the way through. We've got a soft spot right there. And we'll slide it under here. And then we're gonna be ready to serve up pretty soon. But this melon was only like, I want to say like $3.50 at Costco. And I'm going to get way more than what you can get in a container at a grocery store. I always say paying for them to cut up your fruit is like highway robbery because you get so little fruit for the amount that you have to pay for. Like a pineapple you can get for $3, but every time you try to buy pineapple at the store, you're paying, between, for a small container, $6, which is like a third of a pineapple, to a large container, which can be up to like $12. So it is way overpriced. And it's not hard. Pineapples, once you know how to cut them up, they're not hard. Same with melons. It might seem daunting at first, but it's not that hard. Just nice little slits through. And then you just kind of slide your blade along. And look, I already got like a mountain here of Hami Melon. And you can look, it's kind of, it has the same color of cantaloupe, but you can kind of look at it and see that it has a slightly different texture. It's not as smooth, and that's because it's got that nice crunch to it, which makes it so delicious. And you could always slice it up and eat it, straight like a watermelon. I know a lot of like when we're camping, that's how I'll slice up my melons so that it's easier to, you're not doing individual slices. This one would also, if you've ever had the, what do they call it? In Spain, it's melon y jamón, which is the melon with like prosciutto, and there it's the Spanish ham. So good. The flavors work really well together. It was one of my favorite appetizers when I would visit my grandparents in Spain because that's where they retired, and we always get that at a restaurant. Okay, let's see if these guys are ready to flip. And then we can grab our, just a little bit longer, our sweet potato fries out of the oven. They need a little bit longer. They've got a blondish fry on them, and I want them to be more of a deeper brown like that color. So I'm going to go grab our sweet potato fries because those should be done. And then we can actually serve up what we have. Okay. Nice and steamy. So here are our sweet potato fries. We've got a nice little crisp on them. They're still tender in this inside, but they have that kind of crunch with them which will give a delicious for it. And I think the Cajun plays well with the pork tenderloin. Now we're going to serve ours up with some brioche buns. I'm using this pack of brioche buns because my 20-month-old this morning stole it and took a bite out of it. Didn't get in there, but took a bite out of my buns. And I was like, well, we got to use these guys up. And I'm like sitting here and I'm like, didn't even take it out. He was just like, arr. I was that my crazy Jack. He is the one where you can't like anything around. He takes bites at like foam toys, takes a bite out of the noodles at the pool. Here we go. At my mom's house, he took like 6 bites out of the pool noodle, and I was like, let's put it somewhere else. Not my Jackie. Okay, there we go. Got that nice kind of golden brown on it. We'll let those cook up, but let me grab a plate here and let's serve up our lunch. Okay. So we're going to start with our brioche bun. Now, brioche buns are the best. If you haven't had them before, you see how they've got like a yellowish kind of coloring inside? They're a little bit sweeter, but not like a sweet bread, but they've got a little bit of sweetness to them. They're really soft and they are just delicious. So let's grab our pork tenderloin here. Grab our first one off. I'm going to put it on here. Now, my favorite way to do pork tenderloin sandwiches, and I know this is crazy, Chick-fil-A sauce. Absolutely love it. So we're going to drizzle it with some Chick-fil-A sauce because it just is amazing. I've made my own sauces before, but Chick-fil-A is always a perfect go-to. Now we've got our Cajun sweet potato fries, which I also like to dip in Chick-fil-A sauce. I just love Chick-fil-A sauce. With that, and those have a nice kind of a little bit of a kick to them, a nice spice to them, but they're not overly spicy. But they have that onion savory flavor that plays well. And then, of course, we'll serve it with our Hami Melon to kind of top it off, having something nice and refreshing with our lunch today. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of our recipes at home, you can just go to our link on our profile page, search for what we cook, so fried pork tenderloin sandwiches and sweet potato fries, and then you can watch along and cook with me again at home. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our little cooking like utensils, gadgets in there. I've got my spatulas, I've got my Woodstock knives, I've got a cutting board set that we use. I've got my hex cloud. It's all in there that you can check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.